This material was funded by USDA's Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP. Stay up to date with MyPlate. Visit choosemyplate.gov frequently to find updates, new resources, and other tools to help you bring MyPlate to life. Pulled pork sliders. Today I'll be showing you how to make pulled pork. To make this a balanced meal, I recommend pairing with a homemade red cabbage and carrot slaw atop a whole wheat bun. To make this recipe, you will need 1/2 pork shoulder with the bone in, 1½ cups of cider or white vinegar, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, 1 teaspoon crushed red pepper flakes, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and whole wheat dinner rolls or slider buns. To make the homemade slaw, you will need 1 head of shredded red cabbage, 2 scrubbed and shredded carrots, 1/4 cup of canola oil, 1/4 cup of vinegar, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. Pause this video if you need more time to review this information. This is a 5-ingredient recipe with inexpensive items. Fresh pork shoulder was used in this cost estimate, but a more inexpensive option, such as canned pork, is available in stores or from your local food pantry. Nutritional information. This recipe makes 8 servings of pulled pork. A serving size is 1/2 cup, and each serving has 487 calories, 28 grams of total fat, 454 milligrams of sodium, 14 grams of total carbohydrate, and 42 grams of protein. Hi, and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Rachel, and I'm a SNAP-Ed nutritionist with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Jefferson County. And today I'm going to show you how to make pulled pork sliders using canned pork that I have here with me. We're going to use a cast iron Dutch oven. If you have a slow cooker or a pressure cooker, you can also use that. Or if you have a casserole dish, you can use a casserole dish in the oven to prepare the pulled pork as well. Just a couple of food safety items. I did already wash my hands for a minimum of 20 seconds using hot soap and water, and I did already sanitize my countertop, so you'll want to be sure to do both of those before preparing any food or any recipe to reduce the risk of cross-contamination, so different germs, different bacteria, getting in different foods, which can increase the risk of foodborne illness. One other thing to note, if you're using canned products, be sure to always check around the can, look for any dents or any punctures. You want to make sure that there are no dents or punctures, because if there are, it could again be a risk of foodborne illness. And I already did wash the top of this can as well, so be sure to wash the top of the can before you open with your can opener, because when you puncture the lid, you could be transmitting germs into the food item that you're preparing. So as I did mention, today we're using canned pork to prepare this recipe. Canned pork is nutritious, so looking at the nutritional label on the back here, the ingredients are just pork and salt, and the salt is used as a preservation method. This recipe does use a little bit of salt, but it's relatively low sodium. And actually mentioning the recipe, I did adapt this recipe to use this can of pork that I have. The original recipe that I will share with you did call for 1/2 pork shoulder. Now, if you don't have an entire 1/2 pork shoulder, if you only have a can, there are ways to modify the recipe. And so I've done that. So if you have a 1.5 pounds of canned pork, as I do, you can follow along with the recipe that I have. Otherwise, the full recipe, I'll share all of those ingredients, and that would be for the 2.5 to 5 pounds, or the 1/2 pork shoulder. So again, I did already wash my hands, I did already sanitize my countertop, I did already clean my can. Let's go ahead and get this opened up, and we'll get prepping our food. We've only got 5 ingredients here, so it's pretty simple for the pulled pork itself. I'm just going to open up this can. Okay. So I'm just going to pour all of the contents from the can of pork into my cast iron pan, juices and all. And then my modified recipe is going to use a 1/4 cup of vinegar. You can use rice vinegar, you can use cider, you can use white vinegar, whatever you have. So I'm putting that in now. And then for the remaining ingredients, we've got crushed red pepper, we have black pepper, and then we have salt. And for each of these, it's just going to be 1/8 of a teaspoon. And I'm actually going to do 1/4 of a teaspoon for my red pepper flakes because I like things spicy. But if you don't, you can just stick to that original recipe. I'm going to get some pepper here now. Again, this is 1/8 a teaspoon of pepper. And then again, 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. And that's all your ingredients. The canned pork is in a big chunk, so I'm just going to break that up before putting it into the oven. And I'm putting this in my oven at 200 degrees. And the recipe says 200 degrees for 8 hours. I'm going to continue to check the temperature using my food thermometer. You'll know that the pork is done when you use your food thermometer to the temperature of 190 degrees. Let me mix this right up. Because I only have 1.5 pounds of meat, I don't think that my recipe will take the entire 8 hours in the oven to get to that internal temperature of 190 degrees Fahrenheit. So I am going to check mine and probably pull it out sooner, but if you did use an entire half pork shoulder and you were following that full recipe, you would likely need close to 8 hours, either in your oven or in your slow cooker. So definitely plan or prepare for that. A weekend day may be a good choice if you work during the week. Okay, so I'm popping the lid on it and I'm just gonna throw it in the oven here and I'll catch you back in a bit. With the pork cooking, it's a good time to make the homemade slaw. To make the homemade slaw, first shred the cabbage and the carrots and place into a bowl. Then mix the canola oil, the vinegar, salt, and pepper in a small bowl and stir or whisk well. Add the dressing to the cabbage mixture and coat thoroughly. Welcome back. I just pulled my Dutch oven out of the oven. It was in there for about 4 hours. And I checked on the meat. I used my food thermometer here and it did read over 190 degrees for my pork internal temperature. If you still had a lot of juices in your Dutch oven or your casserole dish or your crock pot, you would want to let the meat sit for a little bit. You could pull the meat out and separate it from the liquid and definitely separate any fat that may be on top as well. I actually don't have much liquid. It looks like there's a little bit at the bottom. So I've just let mine sit for a couple minutes, and then in the meantime, while that was in the oven earlier, I did prepare the cabbage slaw, and that recipe was shown. So this is the cabbage, the carrots cut into the strips, the oil, the vinegar, and then the salt and the pepper. So really a pretty simple recipe, and just mix it all together. Also, while I had that oven running, I took a couple of my buns and I just toasted them so they're nice and hot. And then I'm just going to plate this. If you wanted to make this a complete meal, you could have a glass of milk on the side. You could add a little bit of dairy to each of the sandwiches themselves. If you like a little bit of cheese, you could put a little cheese on top, or you could have a fresh piece of fruit or a salad on the side. Something along those lines to just make it a well-rounded meal, including more than 2 food groups. So your food groups include the proteins, the dairies, the fruits and vegetables, and the whole grains. Ideally, if you had a whole grain bun, that would be the best bun to use for this recipe. The store that I visited did not have whole grain buns in stock at the moment, so I did just go with a ciabatta bun, which is a white flour bun. So this is looking really nicely. There's a little bit of that liquid at the bottom, so I'm just kind of letting it drip for a moment before plating. And it smells very good as well. Now I'm just going to take a little bit of that slaw and top each. If you do like red cabbage, you can use a lot of red cabbage in yours. If you like carrots, you can use a lot more carrots. You could also use just regular cabbage if you like, or anything else that might be sounding good to you. And there we go. Pulled pork sliders. Enjoy. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, provides nutrition assistance to people with low income. It can help you buy nutritious foods for a better diet. To find out more, contact 1-800-352-8401. Connect with us and find your local office at snapedny.org.